Okay, a few last problems to see if we know what we're doing. There are multiple ways of solving a problem like this. Multiple ways of doing this. Okay? Give me a clue of how would I simplify this. What's one way to simplify this? Chirp. Chirp. Crickets in here? So 1 could turn into sine squared of x over sine squared of x. And then you have sine squared of x minus 1 over sine squared of x. What's sine squared of x minus 1 equal to? Not quite. Yeah, not quite. Negative cosine squared of x over sine squared of x, which would be negative cotangent squared of x. That would be its simplified form. Now you're going, okay, is there an easier way of doing that? Maybe. What's another way of doing this? 1 over sine squared is cosecant squared, right? And using a Pythagorean identity, and I know my Pythagorean identity for cosecant squared of x equals 1 plus cotangent squared of x. If I replace cosecant squared of x with 1 plus cotangent squared of x, 1 minus 1 cancels, and I get a negative cotangent squared of x. Two ways of cooking the same rabbit there. That's not that bad. Let's do another one with higher powers. Cosine to the 4th of x minus cosine squared of x over cosecant of x. How would I do this? What's the first step you would maybe take? I would maybe factor out a cosine squared of x. So what's in parentheses if we factor that out, Quinn Fleming? Cosine squared of x is sure there. Minus 1. Cosine squared divided by cosine squared is 1. Uno. What's cosecant the same as? 1 over sine. So I've got that so far. Can I simplify that thing right there? What's cosine squared of x minus 1 the same as? Negative sine squared of x, right? So in this step, I got myself a complex fraction. How can I get rid of a complex fraction? Denominator of the denominator. So I'm going to multiply both the numerator and denominator by sine of x. So in the end, that negative can go into front. I have cosine squared of x. And how many sines do I have? 3 of them. So it's cosine, or it's sine cubed of x. That is the simplified form. Negative cosine squared of x, sine cubed of x. What would we do here? If I pull a negative out, I get cotangent squared of x plus 1, correct? And we know that cotangent squared of x plus 1 is cosecant squared of x. These cancel to be -1. This looks a little complicated. How can I maybe possibly uncomplicate it a little bit? Can I factor anything? Can I factor something out of the top? Probably sine of x. If I factor out a sine of x, I get cosine squared of x plus sine squared of x. And cosecant is 1 over sine of x, correct? What's cosine squared of x plus sine squared of x? 1. What's 1 times anything? Whatever that thing is. So 1 times sine of x is sine of x. So I have sine of x over 1 sine of x. Now what do I do? Multiply by the denominator of the denominator. So I get sine squared of x over 1, which is just sine squared of x.